Good day, cadets. For today's video, I will discuss what I have learned towards in meteorology. In final week 1, it was discussed how the airflow in the convergence and divergence. So, what is convergence and divergence? Convergence generally means coming together, while divergence generally means moving apart. In meteorology, convergence and divergence are terms used to describe the directional force of the atmospheric movement of pressure. So what is a call? Also called a saddle point or neutral point in meteorology, the point of intersection of a trough and ridge. In the pressure pattern of a weather map, it takes the form of a saddle where the air pressure is slightly higher than that of the lower pressure regions, but lower than that of the anticyclone zones. There are three types of the atmospheric pressure or the cone. So firstly is the symmetric, anticyclonic, and the ridge. So and also the trough. So in the symmetric, in the symmetric saddle area, cyclonic and anticyclonic flows are imbalanced. This type is the least prevalent since usually one of these two influences prevails. In anticyclonic, the curvature of the high pressure area isobars is greater than that of the cyclonic flow. The influence of the adjoining high pressure areas dominates so that the formation of the strong front here is unlikely. The weather is very calm and is mainly determined by the air mass properties in warm cases, especially in the winter and during summer nights. Fog and stratus form. Under cyclonic, in the cyclonic cold, the curvature of the cyclonic isobars is greater than that of the anticyclonic flow. As a result, the adjacent low pressure areas dominate and the properties are comparable with the trough. So what is a ridge? So a ridge or a barometric ridge is a term in meteorology describing an elongated area of relatively high atmospheric pressure compared to the surrounding environment without being a closed circulation. And lastly, what is a trough? So a trough is an elongated region of relative low, which is the atmospheric pressure without closed isobaric contour that would define it as a low pressure area, since low pressure area implies a low height on a pressure surface. Troughs and ridges refers to features in an identical sense as those on a topographic map. Here we go to final week 2. So, the World Meteorology Organization. This organization helps or tends in how to report and record all the observed weather conditions within your vicinity. So, what the World Meteorology Organization history? Standard meteorological reporting started nearly 150 years ago, long before the invention of radio. Apart from reporting the weather by radio, which started in 1906, changes have been gradual. In 1946, all members of the British Commonwealth decided to cooperate in organizing meteorological work at sea. A year later, the WMO was formed and extended this cooperation to include all countries and introduced all the universal code to standardize all the weather reporting, since the only minor changes have been necessary. So this type of organization, it tends to help in reporting and record the observation from the community of reporting to the weather using the meteorological codes, and it was also defined as to help and aid to the observer to help them to communicate what kind of situation that they have. So full details are in the ship's code and the code book. In this code and the code book, there are all the codes that you will use, especially on what specific time, specific name of specific type of clouds, or anything that you wanted to report according to your observed weather. So these are the list I have shown that will help you and guide you in making a record and report into your observed weather condition. So, final victory. These are the following codes that will guide you in reporting observing weather in the vicinity. So weather information and forecasting on shipboard. Since we are done on what will be the use of the codes, especially in reporting weather conditions, and now we will take and also to annotate what is the importance of weather information and forecasting on shipboard. So weather messages, there are types of weather messages that we can use in accordance to what type of specification, or just like a small scarf or any specification of your vessel. And also is the weather maps, especially it is one of the most prominent maps that we will use, especially in reporting weathers, and prognostic charts, and also analysis maps in accordance to the weather maps. So there are 5 types of forecasting methods. So first is the historical forecasting. It means that predicting the weather by assuming that what happened in the past will happen again. This time is one of the methods used to predict the traps of hurricane. Persistent forecasting is often reliable over periods of minutes or hours in most occasions. Persistent forecasting doesn't work well for periods longer than a couple of hours because the temperature and cloud cover often vary greatly between morning and afternoon and evening, and between day and night. And third is trend forecasting. It is a form of extrapolation extending a defined rate of change into the future. Synoptic forecasting can be compared to analog communication in which variables can change continuously. Numerical forecasting is more like digital communication, in which the variables are broken up into small parcels or buckets, and behavior or the whole system is deduced by brute force of calculation based on the law of physics. That's all for week 4. Tropical cyclone naming institution. In these tables, you can see that there are categorized within basin, institution, and also the area of responsibility. So there are also institutions that are named here, what type of institution they have, all the latitudes that they covered, all the hemisphere. It was covered by 2 hemispheres, which is the northern hemisphere and also the southern hemisphere. So for today's video, I will discuss what is tropical cyclones and subtropical cyclones. Are named by various warning centers to provide ease of communication between forecasters and the general public regarding for forecast watches and warnings. The credit for the first usage of personal names of weather system is generally given to the Queensland Government Meteorologist, which is Mr. Clement Rudge, who named system between 1887 and 1907. So there are a lot of areas covered in the naming of the different types of storms or any type of hurricanes that will come into your country. So from North Atlantic Ocean, within the North Atlantic Ocean, tropical or subtropical cyclones are named by the National Hurricane Center or NHC when they are judged to have intensified into a tropical storm with winds at least 34 knots. In Eastern Pacific Ocean, within the Eastern Pacific Ocean, there are 2 warnings centers that assign names to tropical cyclones on behalf of the World Meteorological Organization, when they are judged to have intensified into a tropical storm with a wind of at least 34 nautical miles. So North Pacific east of 140 degrees west, or the North Pacific, when a tropical depression intensifies into tropical storm to the north of equator between the coastline of the Americas and 140 degrees west. It will be named by the same, which is the North Atlantic Ocean in the National Hurricane Center. Cebu North Pacific Ocean, when a tropical depression intensifies into tropical storm to the north of the equator between 140 degrees west and 180 degrees. It is named by the CPHC, and followed by the North Indian Ocean, Southwest Indian Ocean, South Atlantic Ocean, Australian regions, Southern Pacific Ocean, and any other parts of the country that uses types of region, especially in naming such type of tropical storm or any depression that will help them to name it and identify what kind of tropical storm that they have by using this kind of methodology of their institution. So here in Philippines, Pag-asa is always what they call this. They always try to give some effort, especially in naming the storm. So Pag-asa way back was always just needing the help of other institution, especially on naming their storms, just like that. They need a consultation to other institution that will help them to, especially on naming cyclones, what are the speed of the cyclones, and also the depressions. So since 1963, Pag-asa has independently operated its own naming scheme for tropical cyclones that occur within its own self-defined Philippine area of responsibility. The names are taken from 4 different lists of 25. So the 4 lists of names are rotated every 4 years. So there are a lot of names, especially on naming the tropical cyclones and also the depression. So once the name will be forgotten or erased once it caused 1 billion in damage or at least 300 deaths within the Philippines. So the Pag-asa has its own naming scheme, has its own strategy, especially on naming those tropical storms or any thunder or any tropical depression that will attack that will attain the Philippine area of responsibility, in which they're the ones who will help and inform people, especially what type of storm is that, and also the Pag-asa will tends to help the people in understanding what is the importance of meteorology and to know what is your weather, because life is precious. So always know what is weather, because we don't know what will happen to the earth in the future times. So that's all for the final week 4 and all of my reviews and all my insights in the meteorology. And I hope that you will enjoy and also learn what I have discussed today. Thank you and see you in the next video. Bye!